which transforms wax to pure light and warmth, to remind us of our own living, transforming the stuff of this world into the love and activity of our daily lives. As we remember Elissa, may today bring forth transformation in ourselves, from grief, healing, from memory, wholeness, and from celebration, love.
Welcome to this service of memory for Elissa FLAUMENHAFT, the opportunity to celebrate her life and to join together as a family. To the FLAUMENHAFT family and for the friends, I welcome you into the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Low Country. For the staff and for the members who have worked so hard to put this program together, we thank you. And I know that this is a special time to be able to serve this family in the way that's meaningful and significant. So we gather here in order to be able to celebrate her. My name is Charlie Tyler. I'm the pastoral minister here. It's my privilege to serve this congregation and to be in front of you now as we remember her life and to celebrate her life. And I would pray that we might be able to accomplish that in a way that honors her, dignifies her, and celebrates her life and her family's life too. So if we can, I'd like to bring our attention now to our first piece of music, our hymn number 38. You find that in the hymnal in front of you, and if you would please, may you please stand and sing together if you're willing and able. Morning has broken. Hymn number 38.
Morning has broken,
Thank you. You may be seated. Tributes now from Michael and Robert and Alan in the order that you're in the bulletin. If you would please come.
Good afternoon. I would like to begin by offering my sincerest appreciation to everyone here for coming today to remember my mom. Whether you traveled from near or far, you did so because of your desire to support our family and because of your fondness for Mom. And if you knew Mom, even a little, how could you not be fond of her? She was lovely and courteous, had a thoughtful respect for others. Among the many characteristics that make me who I am today, there are three that I consider most important, and I attribute them directly to Mom's influence. And these are significant because they were primarily developed by observing Mom's behavior, which is a powerful learning experience. Patience. Mom was the definition of patience. She never lost her temper, and she certainly had many occasions to do so. She only delivered criticism when warranted, and delivered it in a gentle, subtle way. Humbleness. She was respectful, soft-spoken, and never sought the spotlight when it wasn't appropriate. These were great attributes Mom possessed, and she applied them constantly. And perhaps the most important, kindness. My mom was nice. Well, I admit I may have a strong bias. I haven't known anyone as nice as my mom. And I try to be nice every day. And when I'm not, I make a note of it and remember to try to be nicer in the future. Thanks, Mom, for making me want to be nice. Finally, I want to talk about a mutual interest that I was able to share with Mom, my greatest interest, and that is all things related to food. We shared a love of looking at menus and felt each of us were good at assessing the worthiness of a recipe. During our last conversation, while she was recently hospitalized, she brought up the subject of pizza, my favorite, and told me that her home state of Connecticut was voted the best state for pizza, and about a new frozen pizza that was earning high praise, which I never heard about. It was a truly delightful conversation under difficult circumstances. And although I am saddened by the reality that that conversation was our last, I'll always have a wonderful memory of a wonderful moment with my wonderful mother. And that is nice.
So good afternoon. I'm Rob, or Robert, as my mother would call me. And I too would like to thank you all for coming, particularly those of you who have come from out of state. I know you all have busy schedules and a lot of other obligations, and it really means a lot to us that you're here. So I wanted to share with you a note that I wrote, that I read to my mother after she had her stroke, and she was in the ICU. At the time, she couldn't speak. She couldn't open her eyes, but she could squeeze our hands in response to questions. So I'd like to believe that she was understanding us, and that these are the last words that I spoke to my mom. But just in case, I wanted to share these with you, because now my mom lives in the hearts and minds of you all. So, thank you, Mom. Each of us possesses unique strengths and weaknesses to meet life's unique opportunities and challenges. For some assignments, we are ill-fit. We neglect the task, pass the buck, or toil through sorely. For others, we are naturals and embrace the task with full passion. And when such a match is made, and it is not in every life, it is a thing of beauty and can evolve in miraculous ways. And though we are a million things, it is this identity that defines us above all else. What defines you? You are the perfect mother. Anything that I know of kindness, or quiet dignity, or aestheticism, or compassion, or grace, I owe to you. If I have even for one moment been thoughtful, caring, understanding, modest, attentive, patient, or conscientious, then I have modeled you. Though none of us is perfect, we can possess things that are. And in the most unassuming, inconspicuous way, you have passed these things that are perfect in you to us. And the giving of this gift has brought great joy to both you and us. There are 1,000 happy memories of you that I'd like to play back, and times I'd like to recount. But my most fervent impulse is to let you know how much I love you and how deeply grateful I am for your enduring love. Thank you, Mom.
Well, once again, my brothers make it a very tough act to follow. So I'm Alan. I'm the youngest of Elissa and Frank's 3 sons. I do want to thank everyone as they have for coming today, and also want to say appreciate everyone that traveled so far to get here today. So again, I'm the youngest. There's some advantage of being the youngest child. You get away with a lot of things your older brothers didn't. You get your way a lot, and you're always your mother's baby. But there are some disadvantages. You get picked on from time to time. You get a lot of hand-me-downs, and you have to speak last at your mother's memorial service. I say this because I knew that both of my brothers would describe our mom as a loving, caring, intelligent, talented, engaged mother whose family meant everything to her, the perfect mom. But as the youngest, I possessed some classic youngest child traits that would challenge even the perfect mother. For example, I was, and in some cases still am, free-spirited, risk-taking, fun-loving, stubborn, persistent, and spoiled. So you can imagine the challenge my parents faced in raising me and the shock after coming after my 2 awesome brothers. But Mom always loved and supported me, even if I drove her a little bit crazy at times. For example, much to my mom's chagrin, I hated to read. Those of you who know my mom, that was a passion of hers. But Mom made me a deal. She said, if I read a book, she'll bake me a pecan pie. She knew I loved to eat. So that was genius, and it's still my favorite dessert. To help me get through high school, Mom used to stay up late at night waiting for me to finish my paper so she would type it for me as required. And I'd go to bed and it'd be ready for me the next day. And in college, it took me 4 colleges to finally graduate from FSU. But they wouldn't give me my diploma because I had unpaid parking tickets. And I said, I'm not going to pay, I don't need the diploma. But Mom paid them off to get it. I think she just really wanted proof that I graduated. And despite me being the most challenging child, I've always had a close relationship with my parents, and I think my mom in particular relished my later in life accomplishments. No one celebrated my business success more than my mom, except for maybe my wife. And her support as a parent didn't stop when didn't stop there. It continued when I started my own family, which includes the love of my life, Carol, and my 4 wonderful children. When my first Ellie was born, who's actually named Elissa after her grandmother, she had strangely long fingers, like really long fingers. I was a bit startled, but my mom took one look at her and said, with those long fingers, she'll be a great pianist, and it's a sign of intelligence. Oh, okay, cool. When Lauren was 5, my other daughter, she needed to get eyeglasses. I was a little bit sad because as a parent, you don't want anything but perfect health for your children, and I didn't want anything covering her beautiful face. However, Grandma Ellis reassured me by saying that she looked adorable, and besides, it's a sign of intelligence. Next was Colin. That elicits an inside laugh. Colin was a cute, loving, funny, happy baby and toddler, but we soon discovered his kryptonite, which, I'm going to try to pronounce it, was ornithophobia, an abnormal fear of birds. So after seeing his fear firsthand, which could be quite a scene, Mom decided to do some research and came back and said, don't worry, the studies show that children get better with this phobia as they get older, and it's a sign of intelligence. Once again, Mom to the rescue. And finally, we had Jack, our baby of the family. So when Jack started talking, he had this low, gravelly voice, which was cute, but we became concerned after a few years because the kids started to make fun of him at school. And again, Mom looks into it and says, it's probably vocal cord nodules or allergens, both which will probably get better over time and are treatable. And, I kid you not, she added, oh, and it's a sign of intelligence. Well, in most cases, Mom was absolutely right. So, in closing, I want to thank you, Mom, for having me and for being the best, perfect mom to me. And I'll love you always.
Thank these sons for their words, and even more so for Frank for watching him and the pride he has for his children as you spoke. If you would please take your hymnals in your hands, turn with me, if you will, to hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. May we stand and sing together.
Oh
grandchildren will be speaking now. So whatever order that will be, begin to make your way.
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I was going to feel left out if I didn't get a good afternoon as well. So thank you. And thank you all so much for coming to celebrate our Grammy list today. My name is Ellie, which is short for Elissa, and I was named after an incredible woman. Beside me, I am joined by my siblings, Lauren, Colin, and Jack. We wrote this tribute to our Grammy list together. We consider ourselves to be unbelievably lucky to have had such a wonderful grandmother throughout our lives. As you all know, our Grammy list was kind, compassionate, intelligent, and beloved by all. She had a gift for truly listening to each person she talked with, and she made genuine connections with anyone who had the fortune of speaking with her. The four of us had many different interests and hobbies growing up: swimming, tennis, of course, dance, taekwondo, theater, drumming, basketball, and even water polo for a very brief period of time. Grammy List supported and encouraged each of us through it all. She and Grandpa showed up to all of our events, even if it meant traveling to get to them. She remembered little details about our previous games or shows, and always took the time to talk with us about them. She had a beautiful ability to ask what you were passionate about and somehow have the knowledge to have a conversation with you about it, no matter the topic. She could latch on to any passing hobby with genuine interest and unquenchable thirst to learn more that made you feel validated in all of the joys of your life. She had always just seen that play that you were working on at a local theater or watched a documentary on paleontology. Had you started cooking Thai food? Turns out she was a Thai gourmand and knew even more dishes than you. She always fit herself into little pockets of happiness because she knew she would be able to listen and engage with you no matter what you bring to the table. It spoke volumes to her curiosity and constant pursuit of knowledge, both born out of her love for us as grandchildren and her inquisitive nature toward the complexity and beauty of the world that she appreciated so much. While Grammy List loved to play tennis with us, she showed us her passion for art and design as well. She loved to make crafts with us and cherished handmade pieces by her family and friends throughout her life. Grammy List saw the world in a way that was colorful, beautiful, and bright. And those who knew her know that the world has been a little bit less so since her passing. Perhaps the biggest credit that we can give our Grammy List would be how nurturing she was, not just as our grandmother, but as a mother to our father and uncles. The FLAUMENHAFT matriarch is the reason we grew up with the best father we could have imagined. Grammy List blessed her family with her love and each part of her person, and in doing so, we are all the better for it. We will miss our Grammy List tremendously, but she will live on in us every day. We love you, Grammy List.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that. Thank you for all being here today. It means so much for the whole family. We're speaking on behalf of the Robert contingent of the grandchildren. I'm the youngest, James. These are my siblings, Justin and Jenny. And we're all going to share just a little brief memory about our grandmother and some pieces we wrote. So thank you for listening. Our grandmother was a home. For generations of FLAUMENHAFT, she was a bedrock of support, sanity, safety, and shelter. As one of her 7 grandchildren, I was blessed to experience her gentle nurturing on many occasions. As a younger child, Grandma and Grandpa would come visit us in Newton, or I would come to them in Hilton Head and Otis. And regardless of where or when I saw her, the story was the same. There was one constant. Grandma would be the first person I saw in the morning and the last person I saw before going to bed. I would wake up in the morning, I would trudge my way into the living room, and there was Grandma, wide awake, scrunched up in a small little ball on the couch, watching MSNBC. But upon seeing me, she would mute the morning news and all the attention was on me. How did I sleep? How were my classes going? Have I cooked anything recently? And most importantly, what do you want for breakfast? And the answer to the last question was always the same: jelly eggs. I know it sounds ridiculous, but my grandma would make an egg white omelet with raspberry jam. And it might sound grotesque and strange, but when Grandma made it, it was warm, delicate, and sweet. It was the embodiment of a warm hug. It was nurture. And then we would listen to the birds chirping and admire the foliage and the flowers. And she would tell me that the bird going pew, 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 pew was the northern cardinal, and that the beautiful bulbous pink flowers were the peonies. On those mornings with just Grandma and I found the peace that I needed to conquer a day packed to the brim with activities. I found the peace I needed to tackle every day. And then, after a long day of visiting the zoo, or going to a nature reserve, or tennis lessons, or most likely all of the above, we would come back to the house, and as everyone was getting ready for bed, Grandma would have one request. Could you turn on the news? And I'd flip the news on the TV, and she would wiggle into her spot on the couch, and her black and white pocketbook would be tucked in right next to her. And then, just before going to bed, the attention was once again all on me. How were my friends? How was rugby? How was track? Who were my favorite professors? She took endless interest in our lives, captivated by even the most minute details we could provide. Whether it was my schoolwork or social life or hobbies, she could connect to us through her seemingly boundless sum of knowledge. I would tell her about my molecular genetics course, and she would respond with a story of Henrietta Lacks, the underappreciated figure in cellular biology. And then, of course, a few weeks later, a book would turn up in my mail on the subject. Grandma was the best librarian. She knew the word on the tip of your tongue that you just couldn't remember. She knew the book that you didn't even know you needed to read. She knew everything. But what made her the best librarian was not her infinite sum of knowledge. It was her unique ability to learn about you, to learn about us, to take interest in our interests. And then she would curate books, articles, knowledge, experiences, all sorts of things to support and grow those interests, no matter what it was. So thank you, Grandma, for being the best librarian, for being the quiet serenity of a slow morning, for being the warm safety of being tucked in at night. Thank you, Grandma, for being a home.
Grandma Liz would have been disappointed in my sunburn. I've been coming here for years, and every year she has begged me to wear sunscreen. One year I really learned my lesson. Grandma spent hours decapsulating and then chopping aspirin, physician parent orders. While Grandma may have shaken her head in sympathy at my lobster-like appearance, she did cackle at the sight of my face slathered in paper towels covered in white powder. She had a beautiful laugh. Good-humored, gentle, patient, she had a way to ease every burn. This year, as I've been doing every year, I plan to come to Hilton Head on spring break. This time, unexpectedly, she's not here. Maybe those of you up front can see what happened. Honestly, It was not her plea to keep me from baking in the sun that I will remember most, but instead, how giddy she was to spend time with each of us grandchildren. And trust me, this was mutual. Grandma was eager to know us grandkids all of our lives. In my younger years, I have fond memory of field trips with Grandma and Grandpa. Whether it was visiting them or vice versa, these weekends and sometimes weeks were filled with farms, zoos, fairs, water parks, mini golf, nature walks. Possibly because she had 3 sons, or possibly because she was amiable and delightful to be around. Grandma was my favorite playdate. I loved our shopping, crafting, baking adventures. Throughout my life, she always pulled up a chair next to mine. For 27 years, Grandma asked me questions. She cared about my thoughts, my opinions, friendships, interests, her questions and investment in my world. Her steel-trap memory and encyclopedic knowledge meant there were always more questions to follow. A few weeks ago, the tables were turned. I sat by her hospital bed and asked her questions. What had she been reading? What was Grandpa and her secret of raising 3 remarkable, smart, caring men? How did she mother so well, so young? While she could not respond, her curiosities live on in each of us. In her honor, I will continue to read, garden, delight in mushrooms, refine my aesthetic palette, find beauty and elegance, but mostly, I will ask questions with love and listen. Grandma Liz, we adore you. We will miss you. We love you.
Whenever I picked up the phone and called Grandma, she would squeal with excitement. She would ask me question after question, and was, as we all know, a masterful listener. But even more so, she was a doting grandmother. And as I rambled on about my life, she would invariably, unable to contain herself, interject with, "Oh, Justin, I'm just so happy to speak with you." Grandma always made me feel at home. My first time flying by myself was a trip to this very island. When I saw the sun shining down in March and the palm trees lining the road, I felt like I had entered a parallel universe. But any trepidation I had about being far away from home was immediately assuaged by the warm notes of my grandmother's voice greeting me as I walked in the door. And it didn't hurt either when she proceeded to make me an entire box and a half of Kraft mac and cheese. When I came to Hilton Head, it was always around this time of year, at the very tail end of winter. Grandma would sometimes gasp, half of amusement, out of genuine concern at how pale I was. In a way, I came here to unthaw. I played tennis, I soaked up the sun. I forgot about the math tests and essays that kept me desk-bound the prior semester. And nothing warmed my heart more than winning a giddy fit of laughter from my grandmother. I really loved it here. Not just because I came back home tanner and with better ground strokes, but because this is where my biggest fan in the world lived. I'll miss Grandma's soft melodic voice greeting me excitedly over the phone or at the threshold of the door. I'll miss our leisurely chats on the couch. I'll miss having in my corner the person on whom I could most rely to love me and embrace me in exactly the same way, through triumph and failure, through good times and bad, through all the noise and commotion of life, with consistency and without the slightest hint of judgment or any expectation of receiving anything in return. So thank you, Grandma, for the quiet, sunny sanctuary that was being with you. Thank you for your gentleness and patience, which persists in my gentle giant of a father, for your kindness and warmth, which lives on in my wonderful siblings and cousins, and for that special variety of unconditional love that only a grandmother can give. Thank you.
So,
I'm coming up.
yeah, if you would please.
I have no notes, but then if I had them, they wouldn't do me any good because I forgot my glasses. While I have 20/20 vision at distance, I'm next to blind without my reading glasses. So, but no, that's not true. My eyesight is bad. Actually, I could sort of get a few words out of the hymn. But they were my hymns, so I was familiar with them. What I'm here to tell you about is, first of all, there's no doubt that Elissa's greatest strength was the way she listened. She really listened. She paid attention. It wasn't just hearing your words. She was thinking about the meaning of your words. And that's one reason I really think, I was the one that came out with the line, if you knew Elissa at all, you liked her. And if you knew her well, you'd love her. Because both were true. I think you see that a lot of the, well, I must tell you, I'm pretty darn proud of hearing my kids and my grandkids. And the one thing I'm sort of missing is hearing the daughter-in-laws who are here because, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump up. I was going to be the sum up. But I'm going to sit down and let Lisa speak to you because she is a heck of a lot better than me at public speaking. I'm not done.
Luckily, I can assure you that he will be back. I want to thank Grandpa Frank for asking me to speak today as a daughter-in-law, and I speak today for me and for Carol, who joins my sentiments, but would be crying if she were up here with me as she is right now. So this is from both of us. And what I wanted to say is that we were so blessed to have Elissa as a mother-in-law, who you truly loved, who is a source of comfort, nurturing, and delight, who we both wanted to always be with. That is unusual in a mother-in-law. I want to share some examples of her selflessness, dedication, and thoughtfulness, but the one that I really will always remember is when Justin was first born. You just heard him speak very eloquently. But when he was 4 weeks old, I had to take my board certification exam in endocrinology. And at the time, there were no parental leave accommodations. Like, I had to take this test. And in order to do that, I had to take a course. And it was 4 weeks long. A full week long. and I had a 4-week-old in Boston, and the course was in Washington, D.C. Elissa came to my rescue. She stayed with Justin every minute of each day, which was 8 hours of lecture for me. She somehow managed to survive in the elevators full of crowded people, as Justin, although you heard him quite eloquent today, was an infant squealing at the sight of strangers. And the most amazing thing was that she got us home safely in the pouring rain, one of the worst visibilities. You probably remember this, Frank. She didn't stop, she didn't pause, she just kept going. She was so determined to get us home safely, and she did. And at the end of that, I became board certified in endocrinology, and she became certified in grandmother heroism. So there are so many attributes to Elissa that you heard about. This is just one of so many times where she saved the day with her resilience, support, and reliability. She didn't make the agenda, as you heard, or even seek attention. She just generously gave it to you, as Frank so well said. She intuitively saw where she could help, and she jumped right in, moving us into our first home in Newton, and again into the one we currently live. I remember her unpacking our entire kitchen. And then just this past July at your birthday, when I tried to make cupcakes at the last minute, she salvaged my problems, seamlessly and effortlessly glazing them perfectly and way outpacing me in getting them on the table. There are so many talents that she had: art, sewing, decorating, but she revealed those talents when she was helping you. Of her many talents, above all was her parenting. I am so grateful to Frank and Elissa for raising 3 incredible sons to be the most devoted, caring, and loyal husbands, balanced, resilient, and ethical. We watched Elissa pass away peacefully on March 11th here in Savannah with the grace and the beauty that she had portrayed throughout her life. We will miss her greatly, but today we celebrate her life, and we will always continue to do that.
I gotta jump up before Frank gets Before Frank can say anything about the nephews not saying something, I gotta get up here. I'm George. I'm the son of Frank's sister Helen, and it's probably a measure of how much Frank and Elissa believe in family that I got really close to my cousins, because I know they didn't like my mother that much. So despite that, I wound up very close to everyone. And listening to this, it's always struck me as a shame that the deceased person doesn't get to hear the tributes, because they are so eloquent. And Frank and Elissa really did raise the greatest kids, who found the best mates and had the most wonderful children, who are also finding such great life partners. And she would have been delighted to hear this. I gotta tell Al that I spent a lot of time with his parents, and I never heard anything but admiration for his abilities. There was never any criticism, and you can imagine that there would have been. They thought it. And I do have to, I forget if it was Mike or Rob talking about the last time they got to talk to Elissa, and I was very fortunate that I happened to call when she was feeling okay, and she sounded so good. I really thought she was going to pull through, because she even remembered things to ask me about my grandkids, and that's just like her, you know, that she had a mind like a steel trap. We shared a love of reading, and would trade ideas about novels, and it amazed me how well she remembered what she read, since it like goes right through my head. except for titles. So that was one of the things I'd love to do with her. Let's see if I can pull this up and see it. So, he said, you know, beyond being kind and considerate and warm and a wonderful aunt and friend, Elissa had those remarkable abilities. My wife calls me the lexicon, but Elissa was the Oxford English Dictionary. Her vocabulary was extraordinary because she was the best read person I've ever met. Touring an art museum with her was amazing. She had such a deep knowledge of art history, and she could offer stories about particular artists or paintings. But, you know, this is something nobody really remarked upon. Elissa didn't love it all. She was deeply opinionated. She was not a pushover. And, you know, a lot of books I loved, she hated. And she was very honest about that. I loved that about her. I remember a particularly hilarious argument Liz and I had with Frank and Elissa about whether Roger Federer was handsome. And there was no argument Liz and I could provide to overrule Frank and Elissa's objection to Roger's nose. But we all loved to serve. So when I published my first novel and Elissa gave a thumbs up, it meant a lot to me because I knew that, kind as she was, she still couldn't have praised a book that she didn't really like. And she went to bat for it too. She persuaded one of her book clubs to read it, and she set up a Zoom meeting with us coast to coast where we could discuss it. And we had a lot of fun. It was one of the highlights of my writing career, such as it is. So I will miss Elissa a lot. Now I'll turn it over to Frank.
By the way, George is not only a nephew. George is probably, since I've survived, many a very close friend. A couple of them being members of this congregation. But George is he flew in from California for this, and he's staying on to help me with paperwork. You want to know one fault Elissa had? But first I must tell you that she was better than me. That's why she did it, because I couldn't or wouldn't, I just couldn't. She kept all our financial records in a bag. And yeah, she wasn't real good at it, but she's come up with them. Take a while. But anyhow, what I wanted to tell you about, and by the way, she was always the good cop. I was the bad cop. But the boys, one thing I did was remember that as a kid, the best athletes were always the most popular boys. And my kids were all good athletes because I played basketball with them and thrown footballs. Anyhow, but this is about Elissa. For those of you in the congregation, you never heard Elissa get up and speak. You heard plenty from me bragging about these guys because we appreciated them too. But I want to tell you a story, a little bit about us at the beginning, because our meeting was kind of unique. I was a census taker in an area right around my home, and every fifth or so family, you'd stop in and get an in-depth interview to get more information. That's the way it was done back in 1960. when I took it as a part-time job because I was out of work. Anyhow, I went to Elissa's house, and by the way, I must tell you, I lived in this area in Brooklyn called Manhattan Beach. It was predominantly Jewish, upper middle class, and I'd go around. I was a graduate of Penn and Ivy League College, so a lot of the mothers were trying to date me up with their daughters. And but when I went to Elissa's apartment, because there were 2 apartment houses in the community, because the people got the city to ban apartment house building in their upper middle class, not rich, not super rich. So I went to Elissa's apartment. I said, who's that? I saw a picture of a pretty girl, and she said, that's my daughter, Elissa. I said, she's very attractive. She said, I want you to meet her. And she started calling around a neighbor where she thought she was, and I was sort of, I couldn't just walk out, so I was sort of kidnapped. And finally, she got Elissa. Elissa came in, and I was 24, going on 25, and she was 18. She was going to Fashion Institute of Technology, which was a real good, it's 2-year, but it was a great program in New York City for art. One thing that I've got to tell you, Elissa was a great artist. And I used to love, though, she liked designing little kids' clothes. And she'd sketch up those little kids and put them in great-looking garments. It was really, but Elissa never appreciated and never maximized her abilities. As I said, I don't think she ever spoke to the congregation. She loved her family, our kids, our grandkids so much. I spoke about her plenty in Joys and Concern. But anyhow, I see George checking his watch. I'll make it. But that's how we met. I met her. I said, I've got friends who are younger. Maybe you'd want to go out with one of them. One of them is a real good-looking guy. She said, no, I want you. And so we went out on our first date. I don't even remember where it was. I remember how it ended. I drove to a house, parked the car, got out. She sat in her seat. So I stood by my side of the car. She sat in her seat. Eventually, I went around and opened the door, and Elissa got out. And I must tell you, from that one on, I never won a real argument with her. She won that one. She made up her mind. That was it. And then I want to tell you one last tale about how we fell in love. And I don't know how to put it, so I'm going to be very indelicate, which is my way, and say our relationship was chaste. I mean, to that point. And it was chaste on the day that we fell in love. So it wasn't that made us fall in love. We were in Prospect Park, and they had cherry trees were blooming. The Japanese had donated, I think they might have had a park like that in Central Park, I don't know. But we had it in Brooklyn's Prospect Park, and we were there for a picnic. And the cherry trees were in full bloom. And we had lunch. I can't even tell you how it happened. And then after we went into Greenwich Village, and we saw a good movie. It was called Orpheus? I don't know. It was all about a celebration, a Mardi Gras type celebration they were having. But the thing about it was, that date, we didn't speak of it at the time, but we both fell in love with the other one. And the only thing I'll add to it, because my daughter-in-laws have had very engagement, two of them, two of ours, his two daughters, have both been engaged, become engaged, and their fiancés are here, and their fiancés were here with them and Al's whole family when Elissa was in the hospital. They live in Orlando, they drove down. And I'm losing my train of thought, but the thought was something to do, I'm sorry, but with the fact that, what the hell was I talking I taught, believe it or not.
Tell us how you fell in love.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. I needed a prompt. Well, no, we fell in love, and that wasn't it. But anyhow, Elissa, the way she'd win an argument was, and by the way, if she was wrong, she had trouble, I have a fault if she was wrong. But I think the thing about her was not just the listening, caring, and as she got older, she would give advice. I don't know if anyone's here who knew her from Mahjong or the book club, but she knew a lot. I see some of my old friends from tennis, and if it was from tennis, it'd have to be old. Yes, we were playing years and years ago. And I appreciate them coming. I certainly appreciate everyone coming from far and near to be here. My daughter-in-law's sisters and are here, and Anthony, who's an old friend, and yeah, we were quite close, especially when the kids were young, with Lisa's whole family, and they were very tight. And one of the things I think I'm getting at is the proudest is we were married 62 years, but each of our sons has been married over 30 years, and they're still married to their first and only husbands, or wives. Right, no, sons, yeah, they were wives. They were, no, the grandkids, though, are married to, I'm trying to think, well, they were all girls, so it's their husbands, yes. Anyhow, I'm done, I'm overdone, and thank you all for coming, but I hope you got a feeling for what a wonderful woman Elissa was. She was a great wife, she was a better mother, and thank you. The largest share, along with David, but Ellie was the moving force, although I know Lauren helped out, and Jenny helped out, and the boys were pretty much useless.
One last shot at the boys. So I watched Frank while the boys were speaking, and the pride that I could see in his face was enormous. But I watched him while the grandchildren were speaking, and the grin was enormous. Just so you know, that's kind of how he feels about you guys. It's great to have everybody here. There's going to be an opportunity later on. If there's somebody that's in the room that would like to speak, we'll be able to do that. And one of the things that some of you know that I'm a chaplain with a local hospice, and I do a lot of bereavement in our community. And one of the things I tell our people is that every time you tell a story about someone you've lost, that person is alive in front of you again. And so when you tell the tributes, when you tell those stories, that's really an opportunity to put Elissa in front of the family one more time. So please take the opportunity to do that. Either here, pick up the phone, send an email or a text, and tell those stories that you remember most well. For the moment, if you would please take your hymnals into your hands. This is an unusual hymn if you're not familiar with it. Watch the music pointing. It'll take you to the right place if you're not careful. So hymn number 311, Let It Be a Dance. An opportunity for tributes now. Are there those who might wish to come up and speak? I would encourage you to, yes sir, if you would please.
Here or there?
Wherever your choice. There you go.
Hi, my name is Howard Sherman, and in September it will have been 50 years that I have been a friend of the FLAUMENHAFT family. And I say the family because although it was predicated by my meeting Mike in 7th grade, I've felt connected to the family throughout that time. I will also say, before I begin what I had not planned to say, is that, unlike everyone in this room, I suspect, I cannot refer to Mom or Grandma or Aunt or Elissa, because for 50 years she has been Mrs. FLAUMENHAFT. My mother was insistent that despite what began in the 1970s of kids calling their parents' friends by their first name, my mother would not have it. My mother is gone 20 years, but I continue to follow this, and it is not out of a lack of affection, but it is the respect that my mother felt should be accorded to grown-ups. And Mrs. FLAUMENHAFT was a grown-up. The story I want to tell is actually one that I just told Jenny this morning. Jenny is the one of the grandchildren that I've never had a chance to spend much time with. And it is about the fact that when we were in junior high and high school, at least, I don't remember how long she did it for, Mrs. FLAUMENHAFT worked in a bookstore. And in those days, bookstores, if they had unsold paperbacks, they could get credit for them, but they did not have to send the entire book back. They merely had to remove the cover of the book. They would send the book back, and as a result, Mrs. FLAUMENHAFT would come home with stacks of books without covers. And they would be, and when I say stacks, I'm not talking about coffee table by the side of the sofa. I'm talking stacks of books next to the bureau in their bedroom. And it was understood that I could always go in and peruse the stacks, and anything that I was interested in, I would then have to check with Mrs. FLAUMENHAFT, not because the boys wanted to read them. Michael would occasionally look at some. Rob was only interested in reading textbooks, and Al has already explained that he had little interest in them whatsoever. So I would have to check with her because it might be something she wanted to read, and it might be something Mr. FLAUMENHAFT wanted to read, but I actually then was pretty much third in line for the books. And it dawned on me, I told this story to Jenny, but it dawned on me that as a result, through obviously the business affairs of publishing and bookstore ownership, it was impossible for me to judge a book by its cover because the books had no covers. And it meant that books which she loved were to be judged by their contents, and in its way, what a great lesson about focusing on what was inside, which she did, and had not seen her for some time, but I shall miss her. And that's the story I wish to tell.
Hi, I'm Anthony Serpi. Sorry for my crackly voice, but the FLAUMENHAFTs helped me through that too, being sick a bunch of years ago. I have known Frank and Elissa for, I want to say, 27 years from this church. It's family to me. And I want, all of you expressed how lucky you are to have them in your life. You weren't the only one. And thanks for sharing her and your grandfather with us. I can't even begin to tell you how much I love this woman in her quiet, humble way. I told a few of you already. I shouldn't, give all my material away, but I have run the kitchen since this church opened, basically. And she was never signed on the bottom of the list. She was never someone that volunteered to go in there and make coffee by herself. But there wasn't a Sunday she was here that she didn't help. And she'd bring the trays of food when they were empty back in, asked me where she wanted them. Just the most loving, wonderful person I could ever imagine. I mean, you guys are more than lucky, and I know you realize that. And I never thought I could say this, because the way Frank and her talked about you guys, they understated what you guys are. I'm not lying. It's hard to believe, because I have had conversations with them about my kids. They always listened to the whole thing, and then if there was a comparison, they would compare it. And I'm so thankful to be part of your family now. So, love you guys. Be strong. Know that she's with everybody. A little energy from her. It's still all here. So,
thank you.
Are there others in the room? More stories. Tell them to the family. I know that they're here. Make sure that you hold her in front of this family in a way that makes a difference. Thank you for being here. Hang on a second. Frank, I've lost my place. If there are no more tributes, I will ask that the family would proceed to the back. I think the piano will be being played, John, if I'm not mistaken. Don't know. If you would, that'd be great. So let's begin to make our way to the back. And there's some goodies out there that Anthony is responsible for, and some of you have brought too. And so thank you for that. I will usher the family to the back. Thank you.
acceptable.